Welcome to the first episode of #agilemarketing. Today is the first episode and I'll jump straight into it. I will talk about customer experience, or CX in short. Bear with me as I'm still finding my rhythm. I'm trying to manage all the slides and cameras and lights and microphones in parallel, but I do hope I will get you some valuable content across today. So what is customer experience, CX? All points of contact and interactions between the customer or consumer and the products or services throughout the full value chain and customer lifecycle. Now, what does that mean? This means that customer experience includes all touch points and encounters, omni-channel much rather than multi-channel, meaning that all your experiences of all the channels are orchestrated towards one experience. Same as the omni-channel approach, there is also only one customer experience across all channels. You need to be consistent across all your communication, across all your channels, and you need to be sure that your customers perceive you as providing added value. Customer experience is measured by data and not opinions, and it has direct impact on the company's success. Good customer experience means also listening to the voice of the customer, which is also a term used to describe customer experience. So voice of the customer is also something that you can Google and find relevant information around customer experience. Also, maybe reviewing the overall business with your customers might be needed, or maybe even the business model itself. Is it the right way that we sell to our customers? Is it the right way we communicate to our customer? And all this through all the touch points, encounters, and all the CX customer experience journey. It's not easy. All needs to be measured by data. All has impact on your company's success, and you need to take care of all the elements in parallel. On the next slides, I will explain a bit more about what that all means. So what are the artifacts of CX? I use this term from Scrum, where there are artifacts of Scrum, to explain a bit more in detail what I mean, what CX means from a marketing team or cross-functional team perspective. So artifacts are the elements that need to be considered when defining, building, executing, and revising the customer experience. They are usually around the 3 P's, so like people, processes, and platforms, and I'll explain you in a second what I mean with that. So one of these elements is finding the right use case or business case to develop or refine your customer experience. This can be both thinking from a, let's say, a customer's point of view of what are the jobs to be done of a customer, what is she or he trying to solve, where can we provide value, but also from the company perspective, like where do we generate revenue, what is our strength, what is our weaknesses, how do our employees are involved in all the customer experience or these touch points or elements of the customer experience, and it will help you to focus on the first and most important touch points and use cases and business cases for your customer experience. Next is building a shared purpose and the community of practice. So especially in larger companies with larger teams or with multiple marketing teams that somehow work together towards one customer experience for one product, one service, or other elements, that is key. So you need to provide this shared purpose around the customer, and then you need to build a community of practice which kind of understands in detail how to achieve this customer experience. Of course, you need to have a whole data aspect as well. As I mentioned before, you need to be regularly reviewing those measures and KPIs. You need to first define those KPIs, which I have a slide in the resources which should give you some indication how you could start to do that. And this, as I mentioned, from the people perspective, so are our employees happy so that they can kind of drive happy customers? Do we have the right processes in place, and do we have the right platforms? Next is knowing your most important touch points, because you will have so many touch points identified when you start to define your customer journey and your customer experience of all your journeys, that you need to make sure you know your most important touch points. There is this term of finding the moment of truth, to finding when is my customer saying, aha, that's when I need to buy it. That's when I'm clear I need to buy it, through all the life cycle of the journey, even after the sale. What are the moments of truth, and what are the most important touch points and the most important elements of the customer journey you need to focus on? Because otherwise you will focus on too many things and get nothing done. You need to also understand your customer journey, which also I have resources to that in the resource slide, so that you know what is a day in life of my customer, and going towards how can I help in the overall life of my consumers, my customers, or the consumers of my customers if you're in a B2B or B2B2C segment. So it's very important to understand this journey and this day in life of your customer. Then you need to also think, maybe also from a channel perspective, what is the right content to entertain this journey, to entertain this experience, but to make it orchestrated, right? Don't have one message in one channel and then another message in the other channel. Your customers will identify that. You need to be consistent. Further, again, you need to build capabilities and with clear focus, right? You have so many aspects now of this customer journey, starting with data, with some kind of project management, some kind of leadership and management, some kind of content creation, which needs skills. You have video, you have audio, voice, for example, will become very important. You have text, which also needs to be done. Also, never count out print, because print might be a good return on investment. You'll have real life events like sales and all the sales force. So all of this you need to have clear capabilities, but need to be orchestrated in a cross-functional way. So again, a huge challenge on the company, especially if you work in a rather big company with multiple teams. Then coming to the platforms, they need to be interconnected, and that's a very big buzzword. To start off, you could also say, look, we have some manual step in between, but you need to find those correlations of your website, your social media, or maybe of your video content with the sales call and your Zoom calls and so on, and linking that all back to a correlation to CRM data, ERP data, so transactional data versus customer focused like empathy data. So all of this needs interconnected systems with APIs, so application programming interfaces is the word for that. But I do fully understand that this is not always possible from day one. But you should, that's why coming back to the most important touch points, you should think of it as a kind of, what are the most important touch points? What is the most important data we want to get out of it? What are the systems involved? And then you can start with some kind of dashboard which has some manual elements in it. So there is no challenge in that, no issue in that. That's perfectly fine to start. Of course, eventually, if you come up with your full customer experience, you know your journeys, you know your touch points, you know your measures, you have a community of practice which solves for a business case and a business case, and you have all your interconnected systems. That's a sweet spot to be in. So as you see, most likely most of the elements will have some 1, 2, or 3 of the 3P framework in it, and need to be reflected from a customer point of view. So when you define your technology strategy, don't think from inside out. Don't think from your rules and regulations or your existing legacy system. Think of it from the customer perspective. What would the customer expect when he interacts with us? Example, would he want to see all his data in his login so that he knows all his previous orders, and would he like to see content around what interests her or him particularly, rather than some generic content about product specific, but rather helping him to generate value. So these are some of the artifacts, of course not all, and in the next slide we'll get into some examples of how to use it. So now I was thinking of an example of a customer experience. I was trying to go a bit into the future, and we might not all be Star Wars fans, but yeah, bear with me with this imaginary story of customer experience. So imagine we have R2D2, which is the robot on the right hand side, which is trying to sell a hologram lens to Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Jedi in the Star Wars world. So how would R2D2 approach that, right? How would the company of R2D2 approach that in the future, having such a futuristic product, which is a HoloLens, where you can kind of have holograms of people that you want to talk to? So starting with, let's say, the regular funnel approach, generating awareness, but here a key word is pull. So not trying to broadcast too much, but trying to make sure that the right people are interested in our hologram lenses. So yes, so where do we advertise where the customers are, right? So let's assume we have still all the same channels in the future and in the Star Wars world. So we would have be looking at Obi-Wan Kenobi, that is a rather senior citizen. So in today's world, that means he would be on Facebook, ha ha ha. But no, kidding aside, so R2D2 would need to start to look at it through a cross-functional team, right? Because if he or his sole role as being a sales robot, if only him would look at it, that would not be bringing the best results. So there would need to be a cross-functional team around it. Somebody that can do social media, that can do content, that can do video, that can organize events, that can make sure to provide the right value in advertising and so on. So the start would be to advertise where the customers are. And how do you know where the customers are? Because you started, or R2D2 started with analyzing the journeys, as we had in the previous slide, analyzing the touch points, trying to set a hypothesis of the moment of truth, right? He wouldn't know in the beginning, so that's why it's also important to not try to perfectionize everything. But let's set an assumption, let's evaluate the data we have, let's create a strategy, and then let's go, right? So the second step would be then in the point number 2 here, if I go with the mouse, a mass one-to-one communication on social media for consideration. So what do we mean mass one-to-one? It's either one-to-one or mass, right? But if you have identified your customer segments, your personas, or your, let's say, the actions people take that are relevant to you on social media, you could start to communicate. So we know that Obi-Wan, he's a Jedi, so he has a sword and he flies around all the different galaxies to help keep the right things, right? The right side, the bright side, no, the right side of the galaxy. So you have his persona, and now you try to provide the right social media strategy, but always with the mindset of value. So you would not kind of provide a social media post saying, we have the best hologram lens. No, you would much rather say, are you traveling the galaxies? Do you have your sword always by your side? Do you need to have a hologram? We provide the best holograms, and that will always make sure you can communicate to your peers. Something like that, right? Always also think from the why perspective. So that would be then because you want to make the galaxy a safer place. So something like that. And even I guess in the future, do not count out print or TV. It's all about return on investment. So if of course a television ad is way too expensive for your company, that might be, and social media is the right one. But who knows down the future, and in the Star Wars world, maybe print and TV will be the cheapest means available and kind of broadcast to millions and quadrillions of galaxies. So just keeping that in mind, there is no right or wrong channel. There is a kind of bang for your buck type of approach. Where do you get what you need from which channel? So the next thing would be kind of scaling the one-to-one selling demonstration, merging digital with kind of robot interactions or face-to-face interactions. And here as well an example. So do you organize events, and if you do so, do you know who attended them? Do you know who signed up, who attended, who then converted? And all this can be done via digital. You can also, for example, you can create some kind of app, or there's certainly apps out there where you send invites, right? Okay, normal, everybody sends invites. But how about sending invites via SMS or WhatsApp? Certain customer groups are much more attracted to the phone because maybe they don't sit all day in front of a computer, so they would really like to have the invites on the phone. And then by one click they would be signed up to your event, so you also know to whom did I send an invite and who did actually sign up, right? All quite standard. But how about you have this event, you know who signed up and who comes, and then in this event showing this HoloLens, you could also have somebody connecting via Zoom or via another HoloLens, I guess here it would be. That would be also meaning you can record this, and if you have, of course, the consent of all the participants, you could also share that later on social media, and so you will create content from different channels, all out of this one-to-one selling demonstration. You could even in the Star Wars world hire some freelancer very quickly that makes a transcript of your call, and then you could put that on your blog, on your company website. So you see here, with the digital world and the face-to-face world, you can interact, and as I said, there's one customer experience, right? So your blog, your website, your video, your podcast, your real life event, and your sales force are all becoming one. So this is very important, and also very important is to build loyalty and advocacy after the sale with top customer service. Of course, that's now fairly buzzwordy, but imagine only having all the information for your customer service, that when your customer calls, they could serve him faster, right? This would be a good start for many big companies. Or if you could build loyalty by making sure that if somebody shares things online and advocates your brand or your product or your service, there could be some reward for it. And with this, one key thing of all this journey is regular feedback. So some kind of a feedback loop which goes back to R2D2 or other sales robots or his cross-functional team after all, right? So this feedback loop is key. In the resource slide or in the metrics slide, I put in some measures that you could start to implement to get this feedback loop. There is a variety of software you can use to get feedback to from your customers, and also, by the way, from your employees. So there is a positive correlation from happy employees generating happy customers, not so much the other way around, but nevertheless, happy customers are of course always good. And another element could be now cross-selling laser swords that R2D2 is also selling, right? And it has an automatic API. Remember the word from the previous slide, application programming interface. So out of your sword, you could immediately have a hologram with your peers. So even in very stressful situations, you could have immediate communication with your peers or your superiors, so to speak. So Obi-Wan could immediately call for support in the galaxy. So good CX, good customer experience means knowing the customer, making it easy for your customer to get information, to get the product, to get the service throughout the full value chain. So once she or he purchased it, to get support before purchasing, having an easy way to pay, during purchasing, defining when it should be delivered. It could be that it needs to be fast and within 8 hours, or it could be that this product I don't need so fast. It could be delivered on next Wednesday, when anyway all the other products related to it will be delivered. Be there where the customer is. So the channels that your customers are, that's where you need to be. You need to identify where digitally and physically your customers are. You need to earn trust, and you need to earn trust by personalized content. You need to earn trust by transparency. You need to earn trust by making sure that all in the customer journey has one consistent message. You need to reward your customers. If somebody buys your product, she or he expects some reward. Of course, the product itself, but also much further than that. Especially for customers that are advocates, you need to reward them for their happiness. You also need to have empathy with the customer. It's called a bit tactical empathy, so that you understand why is a customer behaving in a particular way. Why does a customer has certain needs? There's a good concept. It's called jobs to be done. I link some resources in the resource slide, which you can take a look. So think from a customer perspective and have empathy with the customer. Now you might think, well, this channel is called Agile Marketing or Agile for Marketing. How is that related? How is customer experience related to the whole agility point of view? So good customer experience is never done and cannot be defined for a long period of time. Yes, of course, you need your strategy and you can even have a multi-year vision, right? That's not the point, but it needs constant adaptation and an open mindset to engage in customer priorities and preferred channels. So that means, forget it. You will be never done with optimizing your customer experience with all the customer journeys. They might also change over time. So this is the reality, and this is very much related to Agile, because as in Agile, you need to, and you see that on this side here, you need to think, of course, you need to have some thinking, and then you need to do. But then you also need to learn and adapt, right? And you need to do that in iterations. Don't fall into the agile waterfall trap where you think, okay, first we're going to take a month and we're going to think it through. We're going to think of all the channels and everything that is best. Then we're going to kind of 3 months execute and do our customer experience journey implementation. And then we adapt and then we learn. And after 1 year, we might do that again. No, that's not how it's going to work. You need to shorten your iterations because there will be constant changes. There will be constant data that comes into place, which will make you change things. So don't fall into that agile waterfall trap, thinking that you can plan that out over a long period of time. Do think of your whys. Do think why you do it, as in the previous example of having a safer galaxy. Do create a multi-year strategy how to achieve it, but then be flexible enough to pivot and to adjust where is needed and where you see from data that it needs to be your strategy needs to be adjusted. Also, think about it from an experiments and MVP, minimum viable product perspective. So of course quality is important, and certain industries require rigorous regulations and rigorous documentation and so on. So it's not about quality, which definitely is needed, but don't aim for perfectionism. Aim for trying something out in shorter iterations, delivering, let's call it a minimum viable product, learning, adapting, and then doing it again. So also this very related to agile ways of working, agile frameworks, and so on. Then limit the team's work in progress, WIP, right? Because if you, and we talked about this before, if you don't have your clear priorities, you will try to do too much and you won't do it well. So try to make sure you have clear priorities, those move into the work in progress, you execute, and then you adapt and learn, and then you redefine your priorities as well. Don't define priorities for too much in advance. Again, there is the different levels, but on task level you should have the ability to have smaller iterations with a prioritized so-called backlog from Agile. And think of what is most important first now, and then in the next iteration think of think of this again, what is important. You need to have cross-functional teams. Again, from the previous example, we saw that if you have silos, you won't have a customer experience. You will have maybe a perfect customer journey for one channel, but you won't have a customer journey which goes across channels. So cross-functional teams, including skills of all the 3Ps of people, of processes and platforms. So you need to have, of course, IT, you need to have marketing, you need to have sales, you need to have social media, you need to have advertising, you need to have design skills, you need to have development skills. So all of it you need to combine in a cross-functional team, which is very difficult, especially in bigger companies that do have different teams. You need to have some kind of scaled agile approach and scaled team approach to make sure all this works towards one customer experience, one vision, and making sure that your top management believes in that and can kind of convey this message. I mentioned the agile trap, and here I just want to say that I particularly don't mention here Scrum or well, I did, but scaled agile as well, or lean or design thinking, because it's kind of all needed if you want to think about your customer experience, your customer journeys and your channels, but don't do it in sequence. And then all the story that I told now is related to change of mindset, centered around the customer. Because good customer experience means adaptation to data learnings, new business insights, and the voice of the customer, which loops back to the customer experience and how that all links to Agile. So I hope with that I gave you some added value. As mentioned, I have 2 more slides. One is about possible measures of customer experience, which you can Google and revise. Of course, there's different frameworks. There is this framework of conversion, leads, performance, delivery, and engagement. There is the typical sales funnel. There is the McKinsey customer decision journey, which is more circular. So you will find with Googling your relevant information, but with these keywords you can start your journey into Google to get your results faster. Also, there's other measures like Net Promoter Score, customer churn rates, and so on, which I also let you Google because they are not relevant for all of it. I think if you understand that the customer experience is an all-encapsulating strategy or an all-encapsulating type of work that you need to figure out, then I think you will be fine. And last but not least, I mentioned I will have all the resources linked here, so I let you look at the slides, which I will link below. Here? No, here. Maybe here. Maybe they will be also on top in other platforms. But anyway, I'll have you these resources linked. And yes, I hope you enjoyed the first episode of my journey into providing some content. And yeah, up to the next one. Thank you very much, and have a great day.